Welcome back, everyone, to the Wedge.52Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode comes with great honor to present. Episode 1 of the Wedge.52Gridiron was the Lamar Jackson contract extension. Today's episode will be why Lamar Jackson is the 2023 NFL MVP. I'll give you all the stats, thoughts, different categories, things that Lamar Jackson has done this season to prove why he is this year's MVP. Before we jump in, please press follow on all Wedge52Gridiron platforms. And let's jump right in with the episode of the day, Lamar Jackson's MVP, most valuable player case. I do have 5 legitimate candidates that I think are in the running. Those are going to be obviously Lamar Jackson. And then other than that, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Christian McCaffrey, and Brock Purdy. Christian McCaffrey has had an incredible season. However, I just think the odds are stacked against him as a running back, especially considering the last non-quarterback most valuable player of the year was Adrian Peterson in 2012. And then before that, LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006. I think Christian McCaffrey has a very strong case for Offensive Player of the Year. I would really be surprised if it's anyone except Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill. I think are the 2 strongest Offensive Player of the Year candidates, with CeeDee Lamb not far behind in that category. But Christian McCaffrey's stats this year: 272 carries, 1,459 rushing yards, and 14 touchdowns, as well as 67 receptions for 564 yards and 7 touchdowns. Comparing that to the last running backs, MVP running backs, 2012 AP, 348 carries, 2,097 yards, and 12 touchdowns, 40 receptions, 217 yards, and a touchdown. And then for LT in 2006, 348 carries, 1,815 yards, and 23 touchdowns on the ground, plus 56 receptions for 508 yards and 3 touchdowns. So comparing McCaffrey's numbers to the last MVP running backs, that would be about 70, close to 80 carries less than AP and LT both. In terms of rushing yards, about 350 less than AP and about 600 or so less than Adrian Peterson. In terms of touchdowns, he does have a couple more rushing than AP, but LT's record of 23, 9 short of that. Clearly a big difference there. But on the reception side, most catches, but about 350 more yards than AP did receiving, about 50 more than LT did outdo both of them in touchdowns with the 7 versus 1 and 3 respectively. So 21 total touchdowns, about 2,000 total yards for Christian McCaffrey. Does outweigh, AP's 2,200 yards and 13 touchdowns, but not quite on LT's historic 2006 season with the 2,300 plus yards and 26 touchdowns for him. Christian McCaffrey, very good shot at Offensive Player of the Year. I would say 50-50 shot. We're 49, 2 shot of him, him and Tyreek at 49% likely, I would say, for both of them. And then 2% share for Mr. CeeDee Lamb, who's had an incredible season. So Christian McCaffrey, respectively, will not be a main part of this, argument or episode, although fantastic season by Christian McCaffrey. Looking at the quarterbacks that are, in the running: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, and Brock Purdy. First, I'm going to start off with their season stats. I'm going to be looking at, major stat categories. So for each, I'm going to be looking at these same numbers, and then at the end, I'll kind of, describe and rank where they are, comparatively to the 4 of them. So for pass attempts, we're going to start with Mr. Lamar Jackson. 457 pass attempts, 67.2% completion percentage, 3,678 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on a 102.7 rating. Lamar, all this in 16 games for Lamar Jackson. 148 rushing attempts for 821 yards at 5.6 yards per carry with 5 touchdowns and then 6 fumbles on the season. Kind of looking at some totals for Lamar Jackson, total yards for the season, 4,499 to go along with 29 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. His passing numbers, he did post a 158.3 perfect passer rating this season, and as well. And then now moving to Josh Allen before I kind of look at a couple of comparable things across the four. Moving to Josh Allen, 579 attempts, 66.5 completion percentage, 4,306 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and 18 interceptions, 92.2 passer rating, 111 rushing attempts for 524 yards. That's good for 4.7 yards per carry, 15 rushing touchdowns for Josh Allen, and 4 fumbles on the season in 17 games for Josh Allen, marking his totals to 4,830 total yards, 44 touchdowns, and 22 total turnovers. Josh Allen also posted a 158.3 perfect passer rating in a game this season. Moving to Dak Prescott, who played 17 games as well, 590 pass attempts, 69.5% completion percentage, 4,516 passing yards, and 36 touchdowns to 9 interceptions on a 105.9 rating. On the rushing side, not as much of a huge factor for Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy, but Dak did have 55 attempts for 242 yards, good for 4.4 yards per carry, as well as 2 touchdowns and then 2 fumbles lost on the season. When I'm saying fumbles for all these quarterbacks, I only care about the fumbles lost by the quarterback. If they fumble and their team gets the recovery, they get the recovery. To me, that I don't care about that. I'm looking at fumbles lost, giving the defense giving the other team the new possession. And then so Dak's totals on the season, 4,758 yards, 38 total touchdowns, 11 total turnovers. And then moving to the last candidate, Brock Purdy, 444 attempts on 69.4% completion percentage, 4,280 passing yards to go with 31 touchdowns and 11 interceptions on a 113 rating. For the rushing side, again, not as much of a factor for Purdy. 39 attempts, 144 yards. That's 3.7 yards per carry with 2 rushing touchdowns and then 2 fumbles on the season overall for Brock Purdy. 4,424 total yards, 33 total touchdowns, and 13 total turnovers. And Brock Purdy also posted a perfect 158.3 passer rating in a game this season. Now, kind of breaking that into yards per game for each quarterback accountable. So coming in at 4th place in yards per game out of these 4 quarterbacks is going to be Brock Purdy at 276.5 yards per game for Brock Purdy in his 16 starts. He did not play. Him and Lamar Jackson both did not play Week 18 as they had both already clinched the 1 seed in their conferences. So that's 4th place, Brock Purdy, 276.5 yards per game. In 3rd place, Dak Prescott, 279.9 yards per game. And then 2nd place, Lamar Jackson, 281.2 yards per game accounted for. And then Josh Allen just above that at 284.1 yards per game for Josh Allen. Another thing to look at, Josh Allen getting a lot of, hype the past few weeks with the Bills. Nice little run to get themselves in the playoffs. And looking at, Josh Allen's overall touchdown numbers, a lot of rushing touchdown numbers for Josh Allen, which I'll break down a little bit further into this episode. But in terms of total touchdowns to turnover ratios for each quarterback, in 4th place for touchdown to turnover ratio throughout the season, Josh Allen at 2, Lamar Jackson in 3rd spot at 2.23 touchdowns per turnover, and then Brock Purdy at 2.54 touchdowns per turnover. And then Dak Prescott, 3.45 touchdowns per turnover. So Dak leading by a good amount in that regard there. One thing to note, yards per completion for each quarterback's passing numbers. I think it's definitely interesting to note this category for Dak Prescott, 11.01 yards per completion. Josh Allen, 11.18 yards per completion. Lamar Jackson, 11.98 yards per completion. And Brock Purdy, 13.9 yards per completion. So Lamar Jackson coming in at second with almost 12 yards per completion. Passing the ball as a quarterback whose passing capabilities are, severely overlooked throughout his career. Starting to get some respect for that nature of his game this season, a little bit last season as well. But for him to be having, almost a full yard over Josh Allen and Dak Prescott really proves that his passing capabilities are much higher than, many people give him credit for. As well, Lamar Jackson is doing all this passing stats in a run-heavy offense not only, but without a dominant weapon like, some of these other quarterbacks have. Josh Allen has Stephon Diggs, although not been finding Stephon Diggs as much. Diggs is still a top tier, definitely top 10 wide receivers in the league. I had him ranked at top 5 coming into the season. So Stephon Diggs there for Josh Allen. Dak Prescott has CeeDee Lamb, who had himself one of the better wide receiver careers, better wide receiver seasons, this year in CeeDee Lamb, posting a, probably the best franchise wide receiver season for a Dallas Cowboy who has a history of good wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb broke that with receptions and yards, potentially touchdowns. I don't remember with that, but CeeDee Lamb, second best wide receiver in the league without a doubt for Dak Prescott. And then Brock Purdy's offense, ridiculous offense for that San Francisco 49ers with Christian McCaffrey, who, another potential MVP candidate. I think he's more suited for Offensive Player of the Year. But as well, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk had an incredible year. And Lamar Jackson, yes, he has Zay Flowers, who had a very incredible year and is looking like he has the needs to develop into a top-tier elite wide receiver within his career as well. Zay Flowers had around 858 yards, I want to say, with those 5 receiving touchdowns. Great year by him, but just a rookie, not, a dominant, not CeeDee Lamb yet, not a Stephon Diggs yet. And then after that, Odell Beckham, had 30 or so catches on the season. He's, definitely, again, great wide receiver, great off-the-field kind of presence for Lamar Jackson to have around and in that receiving core. But again, not a CeeDee Lamb kind of player anymore in his career. At a time, OBJ was a top 3 wide receiver in the league for, a good 3-4 year stretch there before getting some injuries that kind of knocked him back a little bit. But still an explosive, good player. And then Mark Andrews, obviously a top 3 tight end in the league. I ranked him at number 2 tight end, best tight end in the league heading into the season. Mark Andrews, suffered that injury against the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 11. So he's missed almost half the season with his top tight end, who was his top target in the, as a receiver or tight end pass catcher there. Lamar Jackson lost his best pass catcher about halfway through the season and continued without hesitation on his passing numbers, proving that Lamar Jackson, a node towards his, MVP worthiness of being able to, have these kind of numbers and passing efficiency without his top target and without a top tier, elite top 3 player in their respective position at, wide receiver or running back or tight end available to him throughout this entire season. Looking at Lamar Jackson's adjusted passing attempts, you could clearly do this with Brock Purdy as well. Only having 444 attempts compared to Lamar Jackson's 457. Neither one of those players has anywhere close to the number of pass attempts as Josh Allen, with 579 or Dak Prescott with 590. But this is why Lamar Jackson is the MVP, not why Brock Purdy is the MVP. So Lamar Jackson's adjusted passing attempts, adjusting to 579 passing attempts, assuming the same completion percentage of 67.2% completion for him. That would put Lamar Jackson at 4,660 passing yards. That puts him at 350 or so yards above where Josh Allen is with his amount of passing attempts. And then if you look at it adjusted to 590 pass attempts to where Dak Prescott had, that puts Lamar Jackson at 4,748 yards per this season there, compared to Dak Prescott's 4,516, about 230 yards, 220 yards higher than Dak Prescott. If Lamar Jackson was given the same amount of passing attempts as a quarterback like Josh Allen or Dak Prescott was given in this season, Lamar would have much higher, a couple hundred yards over Allen and Prescott, not to mention his 821 rushing yards, which is 300 higher than Josh Allen and most in the NFL this season by a quarterback for Lamar Jackson there, proving his dual threat capabilities. Something that I will discuss here in a minute. Josh Allen's potential for, he's a dual threat as well. Dak and Brock Purdy, not as much, but we all know, everyone who watches football knows that Lamar Jackson's dual threat capabilities are like none other in the NFL at the quarterback position. If you disagree with that, we can chat about that later. But so moving into, the next, portion of this Lamar Jackson MVP case episode here is going to be looking at, a little bit of the offensive team stats / ranks for each of these four offenses in the Ravens, Bills, Cowboys, and 49ers. This season, in terms of total yards per game, just going to kind of run through where each of them ranks initially, and then I'll kind of pinpoint a couple of, different ones and their actual yards per game that I feel are important to this argument. So for total offensive yards, the 49ers second in the league, Bills fourth in the league, Cowboys fifth in the league, and Ravens sixth in the league. In terms of rushing yards, the Baltimore Ravens first in rushing yards, 49ers third in rushing yards, Bills seventh in rushing yards, and Cowboys 14th in rushing yards. Moving into passing yards, the Cowboys are third in passing yards, fourth is the 49ers, Bills at eighth in the league, and Ravens at 21st in the league. In terms of points per game, the Dallas Cowboys are first in the league, the 49ers are third in the league, Baltimore Ravens fourth in the league, and Bills sixth in the league. And then looking at the record of each team, the Baltimore Ravens have the NFL best 13-4 record. The Cowboys and 49ers both sit at 12-5, and the Buffalo Bills at 11-6. All four of these teams have made the playoffs. The Ravens clinched the number one seed in the AFC playoffs after their Week 17 victory over the Miami Dolphins. The San Francisco 49ers clinched their number one seed, I believe, Week 17 as well. The Cowboys did not clinch their division until after Week 18's matchups, but had clinched the playoffs a couple weeks prior to that, as well as the Buffalo Bills did make the playoffs as a 2 seed, but it is a little deceiving. They did not clinch the playoffs until, I believe, until after Saturday's Houston versus Indianapolis Colts matchup. They did not even clinch the playoffs until after that Saturday night game. And then moving into Sunday, they had still not clinched the division. They ended up doing so with a victory over the Miami Dolphins there for the Buffalo Bills. So definitely interesting to note. Lamar Jackson as a quarterback, still, very productive passing numbers, on a run-first offense 156.6 rush yards per game, most in the NFL. It's been the most in the NFL the entire season, I think. I don't think there was a game where the Baltimore Ravens were not leading the league in rushing, after, 3 or 4 weeks into the season when, the true averages started to come out of, the sample size there. And then in terms of looking at percentage of total yards compared to their offense, percentage of yards per game, accounted for from their offense. Brock Purdy accounted for 70% of the yards per game for the 49ers. For the Cowboys, Dak Prescott accounted for 75% of yards per game for the Dallas Cowboys offense. Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, he accounted for 76% of total yards per game, as well as Lamar Jackson accounted for 76% of their yards per game offensively. So Brock Purdy, you're seeing, yes, he's an MVP candidate, does what he's supposed to do at a, high level, but the weapons around his team, 6% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're looking at, yards per game, 6% does come down to a lot. Really shows the weapons that Brock Purdy has alongside him on that offensive side of the ball. Next, I'm going to be kind of looking at Josh Allen's, rushing touchdowns number. It's very eye-raising to many people, 15 touchdowns. I want to say it's like tied for third or second in the league in rushing touchdowns with Jalen Hurts as well, who his numbers are even less favorable than these Josh Allen numbers I'm about to discuss for his rushing touchdowns numbers. But it goes to show Josh Allen does find the end zone. But here is, rushing touchdowns, length of rushing touchdown. I went back and looked at each one and found the average with that there. So on the season, Josh Allen's rushing touchdowns length, he has a 10-yarder in order from beginning of the season, 10-yarder, 11-yarder, 3-yarder, 1-yarder, 13-yarder, 2-yarder, 6-yarder, 9-yarder, 16-yarder, 6-yarder, 1-yarder, 2-yarder, 1-yarder, 1-yarder, 1-yarder. So that's good for 8 of his 15 rushing touchdowns came with inside the 3-yard line there. An average rushing touchdown length of 5.53 yards per rushing touchdown there. So although not horrible, 8 out of those came with inside that 3-yard mark. And the average rushing touchdown length of 5.53 is less than Lamar's entire rushing yards per attempt. Lamar averaging 5.6 yards per carry, higher than Josh Allen's scoring rushing touchdowns. And then just quickly looking at Lamar Jackson's, he only had 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. Those were 8-yard, 10-yard, 10-yard, 2-yard, and 7-yard. Good for a 7.4-yard rushing touchdown average there for Lamar Jackson. So clearly, when they are rushing for a touchdown, Lamar Jackson is, making the bigger play, making the, more out of the ordinary rushing touchdown because of his capabilities, scrambling as well as bootleg, play action type of, rushing touchdowns for Lamar. And plus, like I just mentioned, that Baltimore Ravens offense is a run-first offense, even with their new weapons of Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr., new offense coordinator of Todd Monken, who has severely upped the passing attack for the Baltimore Ravens, still a rushing-first team. And Josh Allen accounted for 15 out of 22 of Buffalo Bills' rushing touchdowns, whereas Lamar Jackson only had 5 out of 26 rushing touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens offense. One thing they like to do when they get the ball close is hand the ball to running back Gus Edwards, who had 13 rushing touchdowns on this season. So Gus Edwards, 11 out of his 13 rushing touchdowns came with inside that 3-yard line. So many people, are praising Josh Allen's rushing touchdowns when really 8 of those have came with inside the 3-yard line for Josh Allen. But when the Ravens, Lamar gets them down the field, instead of electing to run their quarterback, they elect to run Gus Edwards on 11 of those, touchdowns that Gus Edwards has inside the 3-yard line. So you cannot praise Josh Allen's rushing touchdowns, but not praise Lamar Jackson getting his offense down to the 3-yard line and then handing the ball off. That is just the system and the, powerhouse, more efficient route that the Baltimore Ravens elect to choose with running back Gus Edwards, in the backfield for them. Now, quickly looking at a couple of pinpoint stats, pinpoint stats, let's call them. Then I'll head into stats versus common opponents for these 4, quarterback MVP candidates for each one. So first stat that I'm looking at is games with multiple turnovers in a game this season. So multiple, that's going to be 2+ either interceptions or fumbles lost, combination of those. Dak Prescott, just one game this season with multiple turnovers for him and the Cowboys. And then Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy both had 3 games of multiple turnovers. And then Josh Allen with the 4 games of multiple turnovers for him. Like he said, 22 turnovers this season. Yes, he has 44 touchdowns, but he's also giving the opponent 22 chances to score. The most by far out of the quarterbacks here in this MVP conversation, with Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy only having 13 turnovers this season, and quarterback Dak Prescott only having 11 turnovers this season. Definitely a huge increase that hurts his team. Josh Allen is hurting his team with the amount of turnovers and the amount of forced interceptions that Josh Allen tries to push downfield. If any of you have watched any Buffalo Bills games this year, you may be accustomed to seeing there. Protecting the football is just as important as scoring the football. In that case, Josh Allen with the 4 multiple turnovers a game, most by a quarterback in this conversation, which hurts his chances at being a MVP, in my opinion. I'm sure most people's, except for Bills fans, would agree that having 22 turnovers as an MVP is not a good look for, the MVP voters. Next thing I'm going to look at here real quick is the record against playoff teams, only counting the games the quarterback played in. So, Brock Purdy not getting a loss for the Rams, beating the 49ers Week 18, as well as Lamar Jackson not getting a loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers, beating the Ravens in Week 18. Both games where Lamar and Brock Purdy did not participate for their team. So looking at, record against playoff teams this season, Dak Prescott sitting at 3-4 against playoff teams for a .429 win percentage. It's not very MVP candidate-like to not be able to beat the teams you're going to be facing in the playoffs. It'll definitely bode interesting for Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys as the playoffs are starting tomorrow. So it definitely will be interesting to see for the Cowboys there, in kind of what kind of success they're able to have in the playoffs after going 3-4 against playoff teams this season. Next up is Brock Purdy. He went 5-2 with a .714 win percentage against playoff teams this season. In second, out of the ranks of these 4, Lamar Jackson at 6-2, a .750 win percentage for Lamar Jackson's unit when he's on the field against playoff teams. And then Josh Allen at 5-1 for a .833 win percentage there in the 6 games played against playoff teams for Josh Allen. So lots of turnovers. Josh Allen and his team still finding a way to get it done, majority of the time against playoff teams for the Buffalo Bills. Now I'm looking at some of the common opponents that these teams have played, that these quarterbacks have matched up. These are all going to be opponents where the Ravens have played them, as well as, some of these other teams, Cowboys, Bills, and 49ers have played them. Several shared opponents, including Miami, Chargers, Cincinnati, Jaguars, Lions, Seahawks, Rams, 49ers, Cardinals, who else? The Browns, Steelers, Cowboys. Many, common opponents throughout the four of them. The ones that I'm going to be looking at is the opponents where 3 out of the 4 quarterbacks have played this defense. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is one out of those 3 in every situation, as this is why Lamar Jackson is the MVP of the league episode. So it'll be Lamar Jackson, as well as 2 other quarterbacks have matched up against 6 different opponents. Those are the Miami Dolphins, Los Angeles Chargers, Cincinnati Bengals, Arizona Cardinals, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Los Angeles Rams. So starting off with the versus the Miami Dolphins defense, I'll be giving the stats for each one, as well as my personal opinion ranking the games, the performances of that quarterback compared to that defense there. So moving first of all, Miami Dolphins defense, Lamar Jackson played them in Week 17. He went 18 for 21, 321 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers, 6 rushes for 35 yards, and a perfect 158.3 passer rating in a 56-19 W. Josh Allen played them Week 18, where he went 30 of 38, 359 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, as well as 15 rushes for 67 yards and a fumble in a 21-14 W. Josh Allen also played them in Week 4, where he went 21 of 25, 320 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, 4 rushes for 17 yards and a touchdown, and a 158.3 perfect passer rating, as well as a 48-20 W for the Buffalo Bills. And then Dak Prescott played them in Week 16, where he went 20 of 32, 253 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, as well as 5 rushes for 25 yards in a 20-22 loss for the Cowboys. So my ranks on those quarterbacks, matchups versus Miami. First is Lamar Jackson. Second is Josh Allen's Week 4 performance. Third, Josh Allen's Week 18 performance. And fourth, Dak Prescott's performance against the Miami Dolphins defense. Moving into the next common opponent is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers defense. And Lamar Jackson played them in Week 12, where he went 18 of 32, 177 yards, 1 passing touchdown, as well as 11 rushes for 39 yards in a 20-10 win. Josh Allen played them Week 16, where he went 15 of 21, 237 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, as well as 5 rushes for 15 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 24-22 win. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys played them Week 6, where he went 21 of 30, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions, as well as 7 rushes for 40 yards and a touchdown in a 20-17 win. Ranking these quarterback, performances against the Chargers defense, I'll give Dak Prescott first, Josh Allen second, and Lamar Jackson third. Moving into the Cincinnati Bengals, 3 quarterbacks. Lamar's played them twice, Josh Allen played them, and Brock Purdy played that Cincinnati defense. Starting off with Lamar Jackson's Week 11 performance, he went 16 of 26, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, as well as 9 rushes for 54 yards in a 34-20 win. Lamar Jackson also played them Week 2, where he went 24 of 33, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He also had 12 rushes for 54 yards in that game. That was a 27-24 win. Looking at Josh Allen's matchup against them, Week 9, he went 26 of 38, 258 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, as well as 8 rushes for 44 yards and 1 touchdown in a 18-24 loss. And then Brock Purdy played them in Week 8, where he went 22 of 31, 365 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions, as well as 6 rushes for 57 yards and a fumble in a 17-31 loss. My rankings of these 4 quarterback performances against the Cincinnati Bengals is Lamar Jackson's Week 11 performance, Lamar Jackson's Week 2 performance, Josh Allen's performance, and Brock Purdy coming in 4th for that matchup there. Looking into the common opponent of the Arizona Cardinals defense, Lamar Jackson played them Week 8, went 18 of 27, 157 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions, as well as 5 rushes for 17 yards in a 31-24 win. Dak Prescott played them Week 3, where he went 25 of 40, 249 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, as well as 3 rushes for 24 yards in a 16-28 loss. Brock Purdy played them twice this year in Week 15. He went 16 of 25, 242 yards, 4 touchdowns in a 45-29 win. And then in Week 4, he went 20 of 21, 283 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions, as well as 2 rushes for 0 yards and a touchdown in a 35-16 win. My rankings for this common opponent is Brock Purdy Week 15, Brock Purdy Week 4, Lamar Jackson, and Dak Prescott. Moving into the common opponent of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, Brock Purdy, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen all faced off against the Jaguars defense this season. Lamar Jackson played them Week 15, where he went 14 of 24, 171 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, as well as 12 rushes for 97 yards in a 23-7 win. Josh Allen played them Week 5, where he went 27 of 40, 359 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, as well as 4 rushes for 14 yards and a touchdown in a 20-25 loss. And then the Brock Purdy and the 49ers played them Week 10, where Brock Purdy went 19 of 26 with 296 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions for him, in a 34-3 win. Moving into the last common opponent that 3 out of these 4 quarterbacks have played this season versus the Los Angeles Rams defense. Lamar Jackson played them in Week 14, where he went 24 of 43, 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception, as well as 11 rushes for 70 yards in a 37-31 win. Dak Prescott played them in Week 8, where he went 25 of 31, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, as well as 4 rushes for 19 yards in a 43-20 win. And then Brock Purdy played them in Week 2, where he went 17 of 25, 206 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, as well as 3 rushes for 5 yards and a touchdown in a 30-23 win. My rankings for this matchup against the Rams defenses goes Dak Prescott with the best performance, Lamar Jackson second, and Brock Purdy third. So looking at my overall rankings for the quarterbacks that have faced off against these common defenses thus far this season. Obviously, the MVP is supposed to be a regular season award, although it's not announced until the day before the Super Bowl or 2 days before the Super Bowl, something like that. It's supposed to be regular season based, although the playoffs definitely I would say have some sort of a impact on the MVP voting. But my rankings of these performances and quarterbacks against the common defense this season, Josh Allen has 0 performances against these 6 defenses that I ranked him having the best performance against. And then Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and Brock Purdy all split that evenly with 2 of the best performances each. And then looking at who came in last in my rankings of best performances against these common opponents, Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy have 2 last place finishes. And then Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen both with 1 worst place ranking against these common opponents. So in my rankings against common defenses here, where at least 3 out of these 4 quarterbacks have faced off against a particular defense. Lamar Jackson is tied for first for best performance and tied for first in worst performance. So, has the most best, has the least worst. Sounds like MVP type of numbers in my humble opinion. And then kind of now looking at, a league notice kind of stats, a couple of things here. Their team, the players' individual performances, as well as kind of some team performances that their team has faced off against this season. So for player of the week, Dak Prescott did not have a player of the week award winner there. However, his teammate CeeDee Lamb did have the Week 10 NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Just looking at offensive numbers here, obviously, as these are all quarterbacks. So Dak, no players of the week. One teammate with a Week 10 Player of the Week. Brock Purdy was the NFC Offensive Player of the Week in Week 11. So just one for him. But his teammates, Brandon Ayuk, Week 1 Offensive Player of the Week. Christian McCaffrey, Week 4 Offensive Player of the Week. Deebo Samuel, Week 13 Offensive Player of the Week. So yes, one for Purdy, but 3 for teammates of his goes to show, kind of the amount of help that Brock Purdy has in that, 49ers offense there. And then for Josh Allen, has a Week 2 and Week 4 Offensive Player of the Week award winners for the AFC, as well as teammate James Cook was the Week 15 Offensive Player of the Week for the Buffalo Bills. So 2 for Allen and one teammate having that, award received by them. And then for Lamar Jackson, he was the Week 7 and Week 17 Offensive Player of the Week and had 0 teammates receive a Offensive Player of the Week award. So yet again, back-to-back things I'm looking at here. For Lamar Jackson, tied for the most, beneficiaries, individual award tied for the most, as well as 0 teammates receiving that, Player of the Week award versus all 3 of these other candidates have fellow offensive teammates earning Player of the Week awards. Goes to show, how, not necessarily how the quarterback potentially is, impacted by this, but by the amount of weapons that team has on offense definitely correlates to the quarterback's success. Lamar Jackson is in this conversation. Lamar Jackson is at the top of this conversation for the 2023-24 NFL MVP award with the least amount of help. Goes to show how valuable of a player Lamar Jackson is to his team. The most valuable player award. He is doing all of this, number 1 seed in the AFC on a rushing first offense as a quarterback, still at the top of the MVP conversation with the least amount of overall help. Not discrediting, any of these teams' defenses. All 4 of these defenses for these quarterbacks, have been at the top of the league for a majority of the season. Ravens defense, Cowboys defense, 49ers defense are all, arguably top 5. Ravens probably the best unit of that. But the Ravens, offense, not so much lackluster, being, 4th in the league in points per game still. So I think, having the best defense should not discredit Lamar Jackson when their offense is still 4th in the league in points per game. So, Lamar getting it done, not discounting, the great seasons of Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Mark Andrews when he was healthy, other fellow guys, Gus Edwards with the 13 rushing touchdowns, 11 of those coming from inside the 3-yard line, where Josh Allen has 8 rushing touchdowns inside the 3-yard line. If you swap 8 of Gus's rushing touchdowns to be Lamar's, that's sitting Lamar at 13 rushing touchdowns, just 2 behind Josh Allen. This conversation is probably even less of a conversation if Lamar Jackson is sitting at 37 touchdowns this season instead of 29. With the 13 turnovers, 37 divided by 13, that is 3-point-something touchdown to turnover ratio, which would put him barely behind Dak Prescott who, has CeeDee Lamb to throw the ball to offensively. CeeDee Lamb, second in yards, most in receptions, second in touchdowns this season. Lamar Jackson doesn't have a receiver in the top 20 in yards. So Lamar Jackson, that's, part of the argument why he's so special as an MVP, and that is just everything on paper. If you look at the games, watch these games, Lamar Jackson creates plays out of nowhere that none of these other quarterbacks can do. Josh Allen is the closest potential with that, but he does make some, having the, half as much potential to make a crazy play as Lamar Jackson does, but having 22 turnovers versus 13 turnovers, to me, nearly double the turnovers for half the chance of making a spectacular play is not worth the risk in that category. And moving into the Players of the Month awards for any of these four quarterbacks, the only one to receive a Offensive Player of the Month award goes to Lamar Jackson, who won Offensive Player of the Month for the entire league, Offensive Player of the Month for the month of, for the AFC here in the month of December. And then looking at these other quarterbacks, like I said, none of the other three quarterbacks have received an Offensive Player of the Month award this season. However, Christian McCaffrey has won the NFC Offensive Player of the Month award in both September and December. Again, going to show the amount of weapons that Brock Purdy has at his expense. Two-time Offensive Player of the Month award winner in his dual threat running back there, Christian McCaffrey. Again, boding well for Christian McCaffrey's Offensive Player of the Year. Likelihood, Tyreek Hill, I believe, had one Offensive Player of the Month. This episode could be a sub-episode with Christian McCaffrey's Offensive Player of the Year, bid. It's not intended to do so, but Christian McCaffrey, incredible season for him once again. And then kind of moving into the final piece, of this, looking at first team All-Pro. For the quarterback position, it was Lamar Jackson. Best quarterback in the league this season, according to the AP All-Pro First Team, which is a very highly regarded team stat to be on, where they pick the best players in the league at each position. There's two teams, first team and second team. For Lamar Jackson, earning that first team All-Pro, that is highly regarded not only by players, fans, coaches, as well as the NFL in terms of, kind of their fine details of contracts and eligibility and stuff like that. Very highly regarded. Lamar Jackson was just announced first team All-Pro at the quarterback position. In terms of teammates, no offensive teammates for Lamar Jackson were first team All-Pro. For Josh Allen, no offensive teammates were ranked first team All-Pro as well. Looking at the Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb and offensive lineman Zach Martin were both awarded first team All-Pro there, so two for the Cowboys. And then for the 49ers, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, and Trent Williams, all four of them voted to first team All-Pro for the 49ers offense. And then looking at second team All-Pro, Buffalo Bills offense had 0 second team All-Pros. So Josh Allen having a good season, not even ranked second team All-Pro with that one as well. And then moving into the Baltimore Ravens, second team All-Pro was Pat Ricard, fullback for the Baltimore Ravens. Maybe 5 or 6 teams use a fullback in the league. So, congratulations, Pat Ricard. You do wonders for the Baltimore Ravens team. Congrats on your second team All-Pro. But then looking also for the 49ers, wide receiver Brandon Ayuk was rated second team All-Pro for the 49ers. And then looking at the Dallas Cowboys, they had Dak Prescott, second team All-Pro for him. So congrats to Dak Prescott on being voted second best, in theory, second best quarterback this season with that second-team All-Pro award, as well as Tyron Smith and Tyler Smith, two offensive linemen, awarded that second-team All-Pro, award winners there for them. So, lots of help for these other, for Dak Prescott and, Brock Purdy, lots of help for both of them there in terms of, their offensive production. Josh Allen, a lot of turnovers for him. Those are kind of the biggest knocks, in my opinion. Not even knocks. You can't fault them for, being on a good team. But my biggest reason why Lamar Jackson is the most valuable player of the year, for Brock Purdy, it's going to be weapons galore. George Kittle, CMC, very good offensive line, one of the best left tackles in the league, if not the best. Second team, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver. Deebo Samuel, incredible receiver. For the Dallas Cowboys, probably the best offensive line in the league. 3 out of their 5 guys made all-pro teams, as well as, having the second best wide receiver in the league of CD Lamb. And then, Dak Prescott going 3-4 against playoff teams. Not a good look for an MVP type of candidate. And then for Josh Allen, the turnovers are, in my opinion, outweigh, not necessarily to say outweigh. Josh Allen still had a good season, but the turnovers outweigh his chances or his MVP stock, I should say, in my opinion. 22 turnovers, most in the league, is too much turnovers for an MVP kind of player. And then, also he's got Stephon Diggs. He hasn't even been using Stephon Diggs. Diggs should be having a way better season than he has. Diggs has kind of been a ghost the second half of the season. Lamar Jackson, best rushing offense in the league, does not stop Lamar Jackson's, abilities. Obviously, he contributes to that rushing offense with his incredible vision and, things that he can do running the football that no other player can do in the league. His athleticism is ridiculous, as well as, not having as much talent around him. Has talent, not as much talent as some of these other quarterbacks. His number 1 target throughout his career, number 2 tight end in the league probably, that I ranked coming into the season. Mark Andrews, out about halfway through the season, did not slow down Lamar Jackson and that offense, as well as Lamar Jackson leading his team through the gauntlet of December, beating the Rams, who are a playoff team, beating the Jaguars, who were in contention for the number 1 seed at the time that game was played, beating the 49ers big on Christmas night, as well as absolutely whooping the Miami Dolphins, in Week 17 to clinch the number 1 seed in the AFC for Lamar Jackson and his Baltimore Ravens. That is my argument why Lamar Jackson is the most valuable player of the year. Everything discussed in this episode, going through the gauntlet of December, and not only going through the gauntlet and going 4-0 in the month of December, winning the Offensive Player of the Month in December when it matters most. Lamar Jackson came up the biggest, has the best performances in the biggest games of the season. Lamar Jackson is my vote for the 2023 NFL Most Valuable Player Award. If you made it this far, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for following the Wedge.52Gridiron Podcast. It's with great honor that I create the Lamar Jackson MVP case episode after Lamar Jackson's contract extension sparked episode 1 of the Wedge.52Gridiron Podcast. Make sure you press that follow button. Be totally locked in for all Ravens and NFL news as the playoffs approach here. Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, at Wedge52Gridiron. Thank you all for listening once again, and most importantly, go Ravens.